Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is my buddy Slaid Cleaves. He's going to tell a story about how Woody Guthrie and Jimmie LaFave led to his friendship with the great Ray Wylie Hubbard.
It was 1993 in Austin. I'd been there for about a year, trying to make a name for myself and trying to learn the craft and playing open mics and busking on 6th Street. I think LaFave saw me at the Chicago House open mic. And I think I was actually playing Woody Guthrie songs at my open mics because I didn't have that many songs of my own. Jimmie recommended me for the second annual Woody Guthrie tribute show that Greg Johnson was putting together. And it was a real coup for me because I was like begging to get attention, trying to get opening slots at the Cactus Cafe and stuff like that. So I got booked onto this festival. And all the luminaries were going to be there, Butch Hancock and Jimmy Dale and Joe Ely and Marcia Ball and Sarah Elizabeth Campbell, and I think Lucinda Williams was there too. So I thought I want to do a Woody Guthrie song that like knocks people out that like they'd never heard before or something like that. And thankfully, my wife Karen had given me the book Pastures of Plenty for Christmas the previous year, which is I think the first release of from the archives, from Woody Guthrie's archives. It came out in the early '90s, and it was full of cartoons he drew for his kids and letters and articles for the Daily Worker and unfinished songs and just diary entries. And I found these previously unpublished lyrics that had no music to them as far as anyone knew. It was called This Morning I'm Born Again. And I put them to music, and I thought, all right, I'm going to debut a brand new Woody Guthrie song. I was in my 20s. I was audacious. I was trying to get attention. And so the show came around, and I think I was second up on the roster, second person to play. So there was hardly anybody there. It was like a dozen people there. And I played my brand new Woody Guthrie song to a smattering of applause. And I thought, well, that was a bit of a letdown. But I stuck around for the rest of the show. And a few minutes later, during the show, a guy approached me, and he kind of has this grizzled beard and long hair, messed up hair, and John Lennon glasses, and he had I think he had a hoodie on and a leather jacket, and he had this deep voice, and he said, "Kid, I think you're on the right track. I think you got something going here, kid. Just keep doing what you're doing." And I said, "Oh, thank you, sir." And he walked away, and a friend of mine rushed up to me right after that and said, "Do you know who that was?" I said, "No, that was Ray Wylie Hubbard." And I'd never even heard of Ray Wylie Hubbard. Growing up in Maine, Redneck Mother didn't make its way up to Maine, to me anyway. I was listening to Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen on the radio growing up. But somebody said, "You got to check him out." And this is when Ray, he was sort of just coming out of his lost years, in the early '90s, and he'd just starting to rebuild his career. So a few years later, we got hooked up to play some shows together. Actually, I think the first few shows together we did, I was to pick up Ray at the Detroit airport, and we were going to do a week of shows together. So I showed up in my 1974 Dodge Dart Sport and picked Ray up at the airport, and he was horrified. He couldn't believe the mess he'd gotten into. He didn't have any faith in me whatsoever as a driver. So we did our first round of shows together in the Dart, and I remember it was pretty rough going. It was a couple of decent shows and a couple of pretty rough shows. And I remember that's when I first heard the expression from Ray. He said one night, Slaid, he said, "Some nights it's chicken and some nights it's feathers." That's the first I'd heard that expression. And I think one night he reminded me of this story just a couple of months ago, like 25 years later. I was doing the Roots and Branches show with Mattson down in New Braunfels. And Ray reminded me of the time that I recommended we go to the gig before the hotel, which turned out to be a huge mistake because we went to the hotel and we couldn't get in after hours. We're like pounding on the door trying to get into this extended stay motel or something that wasn't open after, the lobby wasn't open after 10 or something. We had to make all these phone calls, and get our way into the hotels. It was a rough tour. But also, on the night of the Woody Guthrie tribute, the Zona Rosa, Jimmie LaFave heard me do this Woody Guthrie song that I put the words to, the lyrics. And he said, man, you got to get that to the Woody Guthrie people, and you can get permission to record that. And I was like, they don't know me. And Jimmie was like, yeah, I know those people. I know Nora Guthrie. She's taken over the archives now. She might be interested in this. So I sent a cassette tape of the recording of this song up to Nora Guthrie. And I never heard back. I just thought, they don't know who I am. They're not going to respond to me. Yeah, like a year went by, at least. And Jimmie said, whatever happened with that Woody Guthrie cassette? I said, they never got back to me. And Woody said, well, let me talk to them. And he went to bat for me, and he just started bugging them. And eventually, Nora called me and said, yeah, you're cool to do this. We got permission from the archives, and you can record this song. Jimmie told me, and Nora confirmed this later on, that my cassette was received at the Woody Guthrie archives, and Harold Leventhal was still in charge of the archives at the time. Nora was just in the process of taking over. And Harold was incensed that someone would have the gall to put music to Woody Guthrie words without permission. He threw the cassette in the wastebasket. And Nora claims that she actually fished it out of the wastebasket and said, this isn't such a bad idea. Maybe we should let artists into the archives and complete these unfinished Woody Guthrie lyrics. And so years later, I found out that, because of Jimmie's efforts, this was a thing that got started with the Woody Guthrie archives, is artists putting music to Woody Guthrie lyrics. So when I first met Ray, he put his arm on my shoulder or patted me on the back or something and said, you're on the right track, kid. And that's a perfect example of what Ray's done over and over and over the years. He's seen people, he's seen potential in young singer-songwriters coming up through the ranks and helped them out, put them up at his house, helped them make a first record. He got me on the opening slot on my first European tour. And so we're in a van together all day and playing shows together every night. And he's just a natural mentor, I guess. He's done it for so many people that I know. In downtime on the European tour, he said, hey, let me show you something on guitar. And he taught me how to fingerpick. And I never fingerpicked before, but he taught me his own little thing that he had just learned a few years prior and told me how freeing that was, and that learning how to fingerpick helped him write different kinds of songs. And I wasn't a very good student, but I did pick it up, and what little fingerpicking I do is all based on what Ray taught me 25 years ago. And, everything from fingerpicking to, focusing on your craft and your songwriting and how important that is to avoiding the buffet at the, on the road, what to eat on the road and how to stay healthy on the road. Ray's always been very generous in his advice and just sort of gentle support. And even more specific things. It was so long ago, I don't remember it very well, but he had sort of a mantra that he would share with people, with younger people, about having faith in what you're doing. He said, if your faith is starting to waver, ask yourself, if you're starting to think, well, I can't do this, I'm not good enough to do this, ask yourself, well, what's the proof? There's no proof that you can't do it. If you have faith in yourself, you give it a try. And he just had a formula that he would share with people that sort of kept you on track and helped you get through the hard times and build your career. He's just a natural mentor. He's so generous in his support. For years and years, people would come to my show and say, yeah, Ray Wylie talks about you at his show, and that's why I came to see you, because Ray talks about you so highly. And, I know he does that with a lot of people too, so he's just a very generous man. Ray talks about guitars a lot. He fixates on guitars. He he has favorite guitars and guitar stories. I don't really have. I play the guitar that my dad played when I was a little kid, so like, why would I go away from that? You know, my dad bought a Gibson in 1965 when I was a baby and played it around the house, and I was enthralled with that, and I borrowed it from him 30 years ago and never gave it back. So I don't know why I would play another guitar. It's a great sounding Gibson. And Ray's always talking about guitars. And I've lived in Wimberley for 11 years, and I had never run into Ray, and just one time, just recently, I ran into him at the grocery store. And I asked him, how can it be that I haven't seen you? And he says, the key is, he goes to the grocery store at 9:45, just before they close. That's the only time he goes to the grocery store. That explains it, I guess. I think Willis Allen Ramsey moved to Wimberley early on, and I know Butch Hancock was there. So it was an early vanguard that Ray may have been a part of. I'm not sure what the exact history is. But he's been down there for quite a long time. I went and visited him in Wimberley in the late 90s, I think, and I think that seeded the idea that, this might be a good place to go, and you sort of age out of Austin. Austin's for young people, there's just so much going on. It's so much hustle and bustle. It's old people can't keep up with it. At least I couldn't. So Ray definitely set the standard there for getting out of Austin. Well, like I said, he's very generous with other musicians, and also, like I said, he was just building his career back up. He had some wasted years, I think he calls them, dark years. And when he came up out of that in the early 90s, I think he was very, very humble and very gracious, and was very much into collaborating. And that's true today too. I mean, his last couple records are called co-writes, right? And so they're collaborations with other artists. And so he did a lot of that, and I benefited from that a lot when I was just getting my feet touring, opening shows for Ray, doing song swaps with Ray, traveling over to Europe with Ray. It was very, very helpful to my career. And just watching him every night. Watching him build a set, I mean, I had just started, I've been playing bar gigs and stuff, but I had just started touring when I hooked up with Ray. And he showed me how to do a show, I had no idea how to put together a set. It was just a random assortment of songs when I started. But I saw Ray set up songs with anecdotes, with stories, and do that every night. I didn't realize. I'm just thinking now, I didn't realize you could sort of do the same show every night. I grew up going to see concerts. You see somebody once every few years. But seeing somebody play night after night, and seeing the show that they put together, and how they put together a story that sets up the song, not explains the song at all, but a story that just perfectly sets up a song, and songs that sort of set up each other. And I saw Ray do that every night, not the same exact set every night, but the same sort of setups. That was really revelatory to me. I really learned a lot watching Ray every night. I think even I have my song Breakfast in Hell has an audience participation part in it. And I think I got that from Ray, because he makes a big deal about doing a folk song tradition, the audience participation part. It was a song I don't think he does anymore, but he did a song called Amazing Grace, and he talked about how he was inspired by seeing Willie Nelson at the Armadillo, putting together the hippies and the rednecks. And so I sang Amazing Grace. It was this honky-tonk gospel combination song that has a callback, audience participation response in it. And I think that's how I got the idea for my audience participation part for Breakfast in Hell. So, yeah, I learned a lot from Ray. I remember one time I actually stole his band at one time. He was playing with Jeff Plankenhorn and Michael O'Connor. That was his band for a while, and somehow they became my band. I heard Ray grumble about that, and he saw me play with those guys, and he told someone, hey, he stole my band. And then he heard me do the audience participation part. He stole my act. I pretty much did. I learned so much from him. When I first started touring with Ray, opening shows for Ray, Judy was road manager. She sold the merch. She was his booking agent and manager, Judy Hubbard. Yeah. At the time, I was doing long tours, like sometimes 6-week tours, while Karen was working a day job. My wife, Karen, was working a day job in Austin. And that just, that was exciting at first, but that got old real quick. I mean, we didn't sign up for this to be apart from each other for so long. So eventually Karen phased out of her day job and started doing my booking and my merchandise and coming on the road with me. And we looked to Ray and Judy as a model. We saw them, like when I opened for Ray at the Cactus, and Judy was there with the merchandise, and she was, she was being Ray's advocate to Griff at the Cactus, and she was yelling at Griff for making Ray do 2 sets or something, something he didn't want to do. She was the advocate, and Karen can be really tough when she wants to be. So it was good that Karen stepped into that role, the Judy Hubbard role. Actually, Griff at the Cactus called Karen Judy Jr. for a while. And so we thought, that fits. And we watched them and watched how they worked, and we kind of modeled our business plan on the Ray and Judy business plan, as far as Karen's on the road. She does the booking, she does the merchandise, she counts the money at night, she makes sure that the club owner isn't getting away with anything, and I can be the nice guy, the artist, the friendly artist. It's hard to believe it's been 25 or so years since I started touring with Ray, and I carry with me the lessons that I learned from him all those years ago, mainly just to be true to your music and to be kind to people, to be a good person on the road. He sets a really great example. He doesn't yell at the sound guy if the sound guy's having a bad day. Ray's very calm and understanding with people, and generous. And so, I live by those rules to this day, and I've graduated from a 74 Dodge Dart to a 2007 minivan, which has a little more room for merchandise, but still it's a 15-year-old vehicle, and I'm still out there playing from city to city across the country. And people are coming out. People have been coming out to see me play for over 20 years, and they're still coming to my shows. And new people are coming in, and older people are bringing their adult children to shows. And so I'm just really grateful to have this sort of family business that I have with Karen, to be out there on the road and in charge of our own destiny and following the footsteps of someone like Ray Wylie Hubbard, who kind of showed us how to do it so many years ago. And I'm just very thankful that we're able to do it still. So last night at the show, a guy emailed ahead of time and said that he had quit drinking and he wanted to give me all of his old liquor bottles. And this one's half full. And this is one of the liquor bottles he showed up with at the show last night, a 1988 commemorative. I don't know what, does it say what the liquor is? I don't even know. What? I can't read. Does it say what it is down there? I can't even see it.
Kentucky straight bourbon and whiskey. Beam.
It's Beam. It's Jim Beam. All right, who'd have thought? So you never know what fans are going to show up with at a show.